Hey friends, if you're thinking of making a move to Orlando, there are definitely some neighborhoods that you're going to want to think twice about. And today, I'm going to give you an honest local review and some information that will help you make the best decision for you and your family. As a relocation expert, I have conversations week in and week out about the same information. A lot of you have started the search process in one of two ways that landed you right here on this video. Number one, you're looking around at houses on video. You're looking at new construction walkthroughs, or number two, you're watching some other person on the YouTubes explaining how this neighborhood feels or how this main district is and shopping in Claremont or the feel of Apopka or the feel in Oviedo. And then you're distilling that down and you're trying to figure out, is this really a good area? So what happens next is when you are starting to hone in on your process to move to Orlando, usually in about 3 to 4 months out, I have a conversation with you on Zoom, and usually you download onto me a bunch of different things. Now, the culmination of all that drives me to put together homes to you based on what you described. Most of the time when people ask me the question, is this a good area? They usually are asking, is it a good area for me? And I'm going to tell you that up front, there's obviously some areas that are high mismatch for most people. So today we're going to talk about more of the taboo topics, and I'm going to talk about some of the cities the most of you will ask me about through the process of moving to Orlando. But with all that being said, let's drop a backdrop of where you're most likely going to be looking for a home first. And this is based on years of research and talking to you. This is where people start their search in the first place. So let's take a look. All right, let's get started. This, my friends, is the most realistic look at when people are moving here, the ideal home search across most customers. This is where they will find homes in Orlando. And I'm going to tell you about each of these areas. Now you're saying, Jared, I see orange and I see red. What is this all about? Well, the orange pens are homes that people have decided to purchase, and the reds are ones that are actually sold recently. And the inventory that you're looking at is people that are buying between $400,000 and around $600,000. They want a 4-bedroom house. They want a decent sized yard. They want a newer home. And meaning they don't want to be doing a lot of repairs. So if you want the most typical single family type of property that I will get asked, these are the areas that they will show up. And this is very, very important, because when I run into people for relocation, they're usually doing their resourcing of the area in one of two ways. Number one, they go and they start watching YouTube videos of house tours. And that is deadly because they have no idea where these homes are. So here's the cool thing. You're seeing all these amazing homes in Apopka, in Kissimmee, in St. Cloud, in Davenport, in Poinciana, and Sanford. All those areas, you're going to understand exactly what is it like to live there. Okay, because this is very important, because again, Jared, is this a good area? I would say I would live in all of these areas. However, they're not for everybody, okay? And I want to tell you what's actually not showing any houses surfacing, because one of the things I want this video to be is for everybody, okay? Because here's the reality. Even if you are beneath the $400,000 price budget, which none of the homes here are under 400, okay? I'm going to tell you what it's like to reach it between 300 to 400 in all of these areas. But I'm going to also tell you this. If you're under 400, you are definitely looking in these areas unless you go towards the middle of town and find an older home. The reason why a lot of these areas in the middle aren't showing up is they're too expensive or they are older property types, okay? So that's why you're not seeing any matches down the middle. But I also say the expensive part is we're going to see areas like down the middle, Winter Garden. A lot of people ask about Winter Garden. But then notice, if you're looking in a $400 to $550 budget with a bigger house, there is not a ton showing up unless we change some things. So it is possible to get you in this, particularly if you're on a $450 budget or above for single family house. Because I got to tell you, a lot of these areas that you see nothing, like in Horizon West, Windermere, Dr. Phillips, Winter Park, a lot of these areas downtown, these are pricey real estate. The dirt is where the value is. The sticks and bricks are the same in all of these areas. What people are paying more for is the actual location of the property itself. When you go into these particular areas, if you are in a under 500K budget, you're looking at a smaller 3-2 at best, or you're looking for a townhome or a condo. Okay, so that's where you're seeing a lot of these missing spots. But let me talk to the rest of you, because most of you are looking for that newer 4 to 6 bedroom. You want something with a good amount of space, 1,800 to 2,500 feet, most common. Some people want a little bit more than that. I'm going to show you how to get all that in your budget. Okay. but I'm also going to give you an idea here of where you're going to see matches. Now I'm going to start with the South. I'm going to put chapters on this video so that you can really key into what you want to hear most about. And I'm going to try and overlay what you should and should not avoid based on who you are and your personal circumstance. And if I have your permission, let's get started and smash the thumbs up if you like where we're going with this. So here we are in the South. You can see there's a lot of inventory across the South market, okay? There's also usually a lot of inventory that matches what most people want on the outside bands of town. So if I were to pull back on Orlando a second ago, you're going to see a circle of these orange and red pins kind of around the outside of town, suburbia, right? So the thing I want you to know about is that most of that activity will always fall usually towards the South. There will be more activity down here than anywhere else. Now, does that mean this is where you should live? Well, we're going to find out right now. So let's talk about Central South. This is mostly all Osceola County until you get over here to Davenport. You have Polk County. Now, in the hierarchy of this area down the middle, Kissimmee and Poinciana are most likely going to have newer homes for you to choose from, or desirably built subdivisions for you to choose from. Some guard-gated, man gates. If you don't want gates, there's non-gated. There's a lot of construction builders building in this area, predominantly the entire South. Okay, so Davenport, Kissimmee, and Poinciana, and even St. Cloud, we'll talk about in a second. But if you're looking for newer, these are going to be higher up your list because this is about the only place you can get it, except some of the places we're going to point out in the north. But here's the deal. St. Cloud, not so bad. Poinciana, and particularly Kissimmee, is rough on commute, okay? Now, the reason why is because anywhere you live in Florida, one of the first things you need to understand if you are commuting, and I don't care if you buy in the South or you go up to the west, to Claremont, Groveland, you go to the north, no matter where you end up, if you drive for work, you need to see how far it is from your house to a major highway or freeway system, okay? You have to. You have to find where you are and how long does it take. How long are you on surface streets to get to a flowing, moving highway system, okay? Because if you have to spend 45 minutes a day going 30 miles an hour, bumper to bumper from your house, you will be an unhappy camper. And it's unnecessary. It doesn't matter where your budget is in this range. You do not need to live that life. Hey, it's me interrupting myself. Ready to make a move? Just one call, no hassle, put 23 years of experience and nearly 4,000 satisfied home sales to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
But let me tell you this. If you're down here in the South, these closest roads to the freeway system, you are driving up tight two-laners to this Highway 17, which is a lot of it's 2 lanes, move slowly to get you all the way over to I-4, right? And Kissimmee Central is also far from the next. I would say the 2 closest fast-moving, or the 3 closest, you have the Turnpike over here, which is hard to get to from down here. You have the 417, which is an east to west up here, still pretty far away. And I-4 is the same. But it's very difficult from an in and out egress kind of thing, going where you need to go. You need to check and double check and triple check when you're driving those areas. Now, of the 3, okay, so if you think of this as the south end being Davenport, Poinciana, and St. Cloud, this would, I would say, is going to be the hardest from a traffic standpoint. Again, this area is highly affordable. You can come in here and find over and over again in the low 4s, high 3s, big houses, 25, 3,000 feet, some of them with swimming pools at crazy prices that up here, you're buying a 3-bedroom, 2-bath if you're lucky, okay? So this is what, attracts everybody. There's high value, but the real estate here doesn't go for as much as the other areas because there is some lowered demand because of the things I'm pointing out, okay? It's not for everybody. So to get a buyer for these houses, it has to be a different price. The other thing you gotta be careful for, there's a lot of CDDs. CDD is a tax, a development tax that's been passed on to the owner and it rides on your house for a very long time, usually multiple decades. Some cases it never comes off. It amounts to usually about a couple grand more per year. And you have to just keep on the lookout for it. Watch for flood zones. There's a lot of lowlands and pasture and weird swampy stuff out here. That's something to be watching for as well. But other than that, I'll say the last thing is that there is not an intensive planning process for this area, okay? Now, what I mean, and I'm going to talk about this as we go, is that the area aesthetic in modern real estate is also defined by how the builders and local developers planned or how they were forced to plan the commercial centers. So if you go to a newer master plan community and let's say they have a, beautiful theme, like you could pull off at New Independence and 429 at Hamlin and Winter Garden and look at what I'm talking about. So they built an aesthetic of this modern looking grove community that's built around groves, orange aesthetics, but then there's this beautiful architecture and they're usually driving a little bit higher standard for how they want things to look in the area. So the Publix isn't just a plain Publix. It's got these wild exterior kind of industrial built on. Same with the Walmart. It's the most dialed in kind of exterior aesthetic you'll see for some of these typically plainer box stores that you see over and over again, which just makes them pop a little bit, makes them look a little different, right? That's not the end all. And here's the deal. This area will not have that. Okay. It won't have that. You drive through. And this is why things are fun when people are like, Jared, I'm looking at these 3,000 square foot houses for $400,000 in Kissimmee. And I'm like, okay, have you drive through in Kissimmee? Have you seen it? Do you know if the commute works? So there's these other questions that a lot of times working with a great agent is going to match you up with. Okay. But I'm not against the area for any reason. I'm just telling you how it is. I'm telling you why it's cheap and why you're seeing it that way. Okay. Now, Davenport is a little bit more expensive, but it's a little more closer to freeways. It's not so difficult to commute in and out of. There is a lot, again, upside of Davenport is value over downtown Orlando. It's way less expensive. I have a client right now buying a brand new, big 3,000 square foot, beautiful house, dialed in, all the amenities, and their net price is under 500. For a big brand new house. Now, one of the top builders in an area that's thriving, a lot of this too, again, these areas like Davenport, Poinciana, things of these nature, like you're buying them and you're getting them a little bit cheaper because all the infrastructure is not fully there yet. Like they're just now adding down here in Davenport and Holly Hill Road, a Sam's Club and a Walmart Supercenter, and they're bringing it, right? Because the developers are building these houses out, but a lot of the folks have been waiting for it, right? So now they don't, they have to drive to find a big box store where those are now on the way, okay? Now, Davenport South, particularly under I-4, okay? So you see I-4 kind of shoots right through the middle of Davenport off of Highway 27. So you're either up here commuting down to get to I-4 and up, or you're in South Davenport commuting going up to I-4 and out. I will tell you this, above the I-4 is a lot of tourist communities. A lot of tourists come here, visit, stay here. The funny thing is, a lot of these videos I see that are, I think, AI generated scripts is they'll say,
you don't want to live near Universal and iDrive because there's a lot of activity there and blah, blah, blah.
And the funny thing is, you do want to live. These are some of the most desirable places to actually live from a real estate perspective. Beautiful and a convenient place to live. Highly attractive, this area, Dr. Phillips, and they would say things like that. What's funny is, all the tourists go down here to live. So then they don't talk about the fact that most of the tourist occupancy to go to all these parks year after year and the millions of visitors, they're housed right here. See this triangle? Goes down this way. Not much acceleration, by the way, is able to be rented to a Disney stay. Like you can't really, this isn't high concern, but it's a beautiful area just kind of sitting on its own right here. You don't have like a ton of neighborhoods around it. But basically this triangle shape, the golden triangle, is where you want to buy an Airbnb second home if it pencils. And I highly encourage you to stay away from new construction for an Airbnb. It is way too expensive. But look at this. This all is going to be a high mix of tourist occupancy, all this area. Okay. And you'd say, Jared, what's wrong with that? Don't they have a lot of restaurants for all of them and Target and all that? Yeah. But do you want to be around tourists all the time? It's just a different vibe. It's a different vibe on your street. It's a different vibe because your neighbors are turning over every 3 or 4 days. It's a different vibe. Okay. But the good news is you can't see a ton of turnover here anyways. There's a few sprinklings in here. It's not like there's just a ton of options that you're looking over, most likely in your budget. Okay. But I get asked about Davenport all the time for the same reasons that I get asked about Kissimmee, which is people that were maybe budgeting and living and needing to live up here start seeing these wild looking options down here from the price. New house. Wow. This much house for this money. Yeah, but there's trade-offs. It's really far south. Okay. It is down there. You got to make sure the commute works, but I'm not against it. You're going to be early for some of the commercial development. I told you that already. You're going to be early. You're going to wait for it. You're going to have some development coming. It is not uber overly planned either. Davenport's not as unplanned as a Kissimmee is or a Deltona. Deltona's in the north, by the way, up in South Volusia. Unplanned. Like they don't plan anything. There's like, you want to build a shopping center next to this guy? Yours can be purple. His can be yellow. And I'm being sarcastic, but I'm saying that the limitation on the zoning and things was very loose. Now, I put Davenport maybe a tiny bit beneath St. Cloud, but if you were to say the hierarchy of planning, it's probably, I honestly, I could put them laterally. The St. Cloud is not like uber over the top planning for the most part. They're pretty relaxed, but the area, I think most people have high pride of ownership in these areas. So take care of the general area, and they're attracting, your peer group is rich. Look how many houses are here selling the $400,000 to $600,000. These are people that are shopping in your budget, that live around you in high density, right? And so again, sometimes that's a part of this process. But I'm saying in terms of planning the commercial areas, I think Davenport and St. Cloud are somewhere nearby. Maybe put St. Cloud like a hair ahead of Davenport. It has to be that because it's more valuable. People are paying more for this area than they are Davenport. And the hierarchy of expense, St. Cloud is going to cost you more than Davenport, and Davenport's going to cost you more than Kissimmee, and Kissimmee is going to cost you more than Poinciana. That's the hierarchy of the South. And I also think that's generally a fair assessment of hierarchy of desirability. However, St. Cloud and Davenport's a toss-up. A lot of people that could go for Davenport may consider Kissimmee too, but it just depends. You're going to get more bang for your buck in Davenport than you will St. Cloud. That is a great divider. So if all you care about is the biggest house, and Davenport feels similar to St. Cloud to you, you're going to buy in Davenport. And so that's basically the great common denominator there. I'll say one more thing about the South here, okay? So you have South Winter Garden right here, and you have South Claremont right here. Okay. Now these areas are highly close to Disney World right here. They are going to be interconnected and even closer into the future. However, you are surrounded by tourist communities. They have beautiful brand new neighborhoods that you see popping up right here. Some of these are 55 plus active adult. And I'm telling you, my friends, literally, if you throw a stone right here in this area, you'll have similar size houses going for $40,000 to $60,000, even $100,000 more right here. Like literally across. Now, their interconnectivity is not here yet, meaning they're going to build roads straight through here. They're halfway done both directions. Western Way is the side road into Disney World. You'll be able to live here, jump on a road, be at the parks in like 15, 20 minutes in the parking lot, unless traffic gets way worse, which might happen in the meantime. I don't know. My point is there is South Claremont availability as well. However, it will be pricier than this. So South Claremont costs more money than Davenport, and obviously a good bit more than Poinciana and Kissimmee. But it is a good spot. Beautiful area. You have a lot of forest in this area. A state park right here under Lake Louisa. A lot of construction and planning up here, and some even sales that you can buy up here brand new. However, these are also going to come with CDDs, which means your HOA and monthly CDD on top of your taxes and your mortgage payment in this area going to be $300 to $400 more per month just for that. Okay, so keep in mind, you got to watch for CDDs in these new construction, these high growth neighborhoods. Okay, the next area we're going to look at is St. Cloud. St. Cloud is getting to become a very popular place. So I hear about it a lot from nearly every inbounder who's just studying the area saying, I'm hearing about the popularity of St. Cloud. What is it all about? Now, let me show you some wins and losses, some pros and cons, some upsides and downsides to this particular little town. So St. Cloud has this cool little downtown aesthetic right here. This is the old downtown area. I mean, this area was developed in the early 1900s when they were building the city, and it was built really from this Highway 192 downward towards the lake. So these state streets, as they're called, named after states, Pennsylvania Ave and New York Ave, all these, they were developed and they have little houses across all these streets. It's a little tiny grid with small, it's a friendly area. It's super nice. The traffic's getting worse. I will tell you, because you're adding a lot of construction, all the stuff that you see out here when you're looking at the east side of the lake. This is a lot of population growth here. And then you have a lot going down here in the Harmony area. So this is the suburbs are stretching here. Okay. And they're adding some freeway, some highway systems into this area, going on the outside towards the Sunbridge location, which Sunbridge is a new suburb on its own of St. Cloud, probably pricey for most of the people on this video. So this is going to be like, most likely a 600 and above kind of purchase. Beautiful area. annexing itself against the Lake Nona area, okay? Now you're going to see that in this budget, for more room, you don't see a whole lot in the heart of Lake Nona. So if you make some adjustments and you have the budget strength, you can find yourself in the 32827 or 32832 zip code up here in the north. But right now you don't see a lot. Most of it's south, okay? So you have a lot of construction going in the in-between under Lake Nona, going towards downtown St. Cloud. The base of St. Cloud, the downtown area, is really cool. Like, it's nostalgic almost, because you have historic homes, and you had some that were torn down and some new ones built, and some built in the 70s and the 80s. So you have a lot of time periods down here, and you can walk to a beautiful lakefront park and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot there. However, most people's typical search criteria does not lead them there, because they want a good lot, they want the suburbia, they want a newer house, which is why you see pockets outside of town here and outside of town off of Narcoossee Road, okay? And now Harmony is growing, but Harmony, if you are commuting, can really put you out there, okay? Because remember, if you live in St. Cloud, you're either pushing towards the turnpike to get out, or you're going up here towards Lake Nona to hit 417, or up here to hit the 528 to get out. So you're either going north if you live this way, or you're going towards the west to get to the turnpike if you live on this side over here. A lot of growth in the future, a lot of amazing communities planned for St. Cloud. For instance, there's going to be a lagoon style community down here near the turnpike, near Cross Prairie. A lot of construction. There's always a mix of opportunities here. There's going to be 55 plus communities for active adult, which will, keep the partying down and things of that nature. High type of activities for people that are in retirement stage, both in the heart of St. Cloud, but also up here in Sunbridge, which Sunbridge itself is considered part of St. Cloud. In all of these areas, again, there's going to be a mix. So what I would say about St. Cloud is it's not the most planned out like a Lake Nona in terms of its aesthetic. They don't have commercial on top of commercial that has a tied in aesthetic. In fact, if you go down Old 192, through the heart of town, you'll even see shopping centers that were there from when I was a kid. I mean, so there's really old stuff sitting with some newer stuff, and it's nothing wrong with it. I feel like most of the people here, high pride of ownership, high pride of care for the area. Let me know in the comments if you think differently. I'm just curious if that's still, feel for the area. Now, you're going to have a lot of suburban areas around town. If you're not heavily demanding high commute kind of thing, like you don't need to travel a lot and you want a beautiful community aesthetic, some of these outer skirt neighborhoods are super peaceful. Like Harmony's got some amazing aesthetics. To me, it looks like a prairie land, and I'm probably wrong in describing that, but it's, it's just some beautiful open green spaces. You got the natural Florida beauty. The landscape is still very natural to Florida. They're pulling the same thing off with Sunbridge. So you can kind of see this interesting kind of like wildlife retained aesthetic in a lot of these areas in St. Cloud. It's near and dear to my heart because I grew up in this area in the rural side, but it's still a high growth area, a lot of opportunity. I will say it's going to have you in a position where people are like, I want to live here, but you can't, if you're under 400 or 450 now, I feel like this area, you start to have to trade things away. Like, I wanted this size house and now I can't get that here. Or I want this many bedrooms, I can't get that now. Okay. So like, I feel like if your budget is on the lower side, you're going to tend towards back west where you get a little bit more for your money. And that's, I think, where St. Cloud starts to get voted down, is because I think people are starting to look at the prices here and saying, this doesn't really work for me for an outside area suburb like this. But St. Cloud has a ton of natural beauty, tons of lakes, tons of things to do outdoors. And I think it gets a lot of votes. And again, this area, by the way, people will hear me talk about Kissimmee. Kissimmee butts up against Lake Nona, which is crazy how big this area is. So let me zoom back into Orlando. So if you look at the bottom of Orlando, Kissimmee literally is over here where Disney is, goes all the way over here where Lake Nona is. So a lot of people will call me and be like, Jared, I heard you said Kissimmee is really rough to get in and out of. It's not really well planned. Things that I'm saying as far as like, I'm not saying it's well planned. I'm saying they didn't give a high concern for that kind of part of the planning process. Okay. You drive through it, use your eyeballs. It's the way it is. Okay. You're asking me about how the shopping centers and shopping districts look. It's not the highest aesthetic in the Central Florida area. You're going to see it for yourself. However, if you live over here, the edge of Kissimmee, you're literally like annexed to Medical City, Lake Nona, and all this, which is funny because people don't understand that this far west edge, like you drive and shop in Lake Nona to live in the Kissimmee address here. Okay. So I do sometimes get that question. And then you see some older homes mixed with newer homes in Buenaventura Lakes. However, this area I think is becoming popularized again because of the access to these freeway systems that were built through it after it was originally developed. So you just have to watch the architecture. I mean, some of these houses are very thinly built from like the 60s and 70s. Again, and I'm saying most people that search are going to want stuff like this that's been built in the past, 20 years or so. But look at the price. So 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,067 square feet. And this is Orlando, Florida address. So this is just over the Kissimmee line. And you're paying $490,000, $490, right? Again, you're like on the door of Lake Nona. You're on the door of the freeway. You have a few different options here to, different places to shop in this area. But again, that is way less house and I expected that to be a Kissimmee address. Because when I pull a Kissimmee address, so let's say, can I find a $490,000 house in this area? Okay, here's a $529,000 house. It's a nearly new house, 5-bedroom, 4-bath, 3,438 square feet. So this is a way newer house down here in the south, and it's almost 1,500 square foot bigger than the one we just looked at up here. But this is way more commuter friendly, close to different type of amenity level than there is down here. Okay. So kind of gives you kind of a vibe for two different locations, almost in the same area. But Kissimmee is huge, just like Winter Garden. Winter Garden starts up here and comes all the way down to 192. It's a huge zip code. Kissimmee is also one of the largest in the area as well.
Need to buy or sell fast? Make one call, that's all, and put my 23 years of experience and nearly 4,000 satisfied home sales to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
Now I'm going to ride up the east side real quick and just kind of walk through a few different locations because there's not a ton of options here. Okay. So if you see this area over here, this is a popular area. So we have Avalon Park. We're getting near UCF and the university area. The east side is much like what we would say about the west side. So the east side, Avalon Park, going towards Oviedo, which in Oviedo, you can't find anything in this budget. These areas are highly popular places from planning, from desirable community base, from desirable access to freeway systems. Much of what we would say about parts of the West is going to be this area on the east. Now, the east side is going to be, honestly, can you find the right location, the right house for yourself? Because when you look, okay, we're looking at the entire market. Look how many pens you see in this big area versus down here. You see, it's kind of sparse. The point is, you can keep this place on your radar screen, but you may never find a house that fits, and the budget for you might drift away depending on where you're at, okay? Now, you're going to see some areas here. I want to point out East Orlando, by the way, because we're talking about the East. This area in the East is highly popular, okay? So when you talk about budget, if you're going downtown and you want high walkability, right? Because most people pick peace or access. Peace is suburbia. Access is I want to walk there. I want walkability, things of that nature, okay? So people down here want access to the arenas. They want the soccer stadium. They want the Citrus Bowl. They want Dr. Phillips Performing Arts. They want the party life on the weekends, okay? They like the idea that all these local restaurants and things are downtown. So a lot of folks are going to live off of Highway 50, around Mills. They're going to want to live and have access to like Baldwin Park, Winter Park, College Park, Thornton. You got all these areas, Delaney, all these areas down here. And by the way, these areas are expensive, okay? Very, very expensive. Okay, so and I'm saying the real estate is expensive, and a lot of these are historic homes which need high levels of care, okay? But outside of this area downtown, when you come just a little bit, you see Lake Margaret, you see Conway and Gatlin Ave, and you see these areas around Curry Ford Road. You have a lot of these areas below the executive airport. So you see Lake Underhill, Dover Manor, Dover Shores. These are amazing, beautiful, revitalizing areas, okay? You're going to need a budget of $400,000 to $600,000 to live there in a modest home, but they are the homes of yesteryear, the suburbia of the 70s. And it is awesome. Again, it's grid traffic. So you're pulling off of a busy road into a beautiful subdivision, But you go out this way and you're hitting a busy road. You go out this way. There's a lot of north, south, east, west traffic here. So again, these aren't going to be the newest houses in the world, but a lot of people vote for this. Okay. And if you want to live remotely close to Orlando with at least some element of suburban flair, a lot of folks are going to vote up here, or they're going to vote down here, or vote in here. There's a lot of real estate that is high appeal, high match, particularly for what relocators pick to. And again, I'm just going over what people say to me and where people have moved and what they say after they've moved. Okay. Now, if we come up to the north, okay, I'm going to move really fast in Volusia, but South Volusia is a 20-minute drive, maybe 30 minutes out of Orlando. Your only major feeder route until you get to the 417. There's a 417 Beltway east to west. You're on I-4. You're I-4 bound if you live out here, okay? Which is, not always a great thing, okay, as you can imagine. Now, Deltona is hugely affordable. So Deltona is like Kissimmee in the south. You got low price points, okay? So a lot of people start shopping South Volusia first. Okay, I got to drive in Orlando. Or I want to be close to my so-and-so family member in any of these areas. And they start looking here because they start to see the price tag. So shopping online, okay? So in my opinion, I-4 cuts through. You have Deltona on this side. You have DeBerry and Orange City on this side. And I would say that Deltona, which was a wild history of a place, like these two brothers just came in and like, let's make this land grab in the area of Deltona. And they just started creating this idea that, you could just retire here in Deltona, start selling land, and there's no HOA and there's no planning. Okay. And it's just wild. And I was like, what? How does this place exist? Like it's, there's no HOA. Okay. Nearly none. Okay. So if that's you, and by the way, the neighborhood aesthetic reveals this because the commercial plazas are much the same. Okay. So when you come over here and you drive across I-4, it's completely, in my opinion, it's a different world. And why does that matter? Because you have different access to things. You have different aesthetics in the communities and things like that. So if you are looking north, that's my dissertation on South Volusia, which I'm not going to say a whole lot. Now, you can see in the north, there's not a ton for sale in the modest budget range, okay? So Heathrow, Lake Mary, it's desirable, but you're dealing with I-4. I-4 is your major commuter road because you have to go this way for most everything, okay? So remember, if you're limited to certain things, this is a very constricted area because you have natural wildlife and an airport over here. This is all state park right here. So you have literally I-4 and a couple bypass roads on the side that are surface streets, and they can get icky in the afternoon. Okay. Nothing wrong with this area. It's beautiful. It's among the forest. And that's kind of the vibe of the entire north end, by the way, because you have this natural state forest here, Wekiva. This area is beautiful with thicker trees. It doesn't until you get down towards Osceola to the south, you start to get this prairie land view where you have sparse pines here and there, some swamp, some palmettos, and lower level ground cover. You don't have a ton of trees like you do up north. So North Orlando is amazing. All this area right here. Okay. So that's what I'm going to say next. I'm going to segue into the fact that you've got a really good city, high rated schools through this north area, which would include Heathrow, Lake Mary, Longwood, and again, very desirable older homes. You don't see a lot of matches in here because these are older homes. I didn't put homes in the 70s in this search. But just like I did on East Orlando, I'm going to say that if you're relocating in a relocating budget, that if you aren't afraid of older homes and they're amazing, like I feel like the Northwest has some of the coolest character constructed in their homes, which would be all of Longwood, even going towards Lake. I feel like Heathrow went back more towards production style construction. Sanford West has some amazing cool little communities off of, I think it's the 46, if I'm not mistaken. So the 429 essentially, but this used to be, I think they used to call this the 46. People are going to be in the comments giving me a hard time over not knowing that off the top of my head. But there's an east to west run. Sanford downtown is over here. Okay. So Sanford downtown is old, and there's a lot of mix of revitalized downtown, and there's a mix of some dilapidated downtown. You can drive through and you can see it. But the thing is, you're not going to see a lot of matching homes in the move up kind of relocation budget downtown Sanford. Okay. But West Sanford, which creeps over here where you see Astor Farms, is not even, it's almost more like a Lake Mary or a Heathrow or a Longwood. It has this forested vibe and beautiful a lot of gated communities down here, a lot of custom, almost semi-custom in their construction. So this, again, just trying to give you a feel for what you're seeing, because I know the commentary that's said about some of these areas. I know what you're reading online, and I'm going to say more on some of these areas in the West because that's important to pick apart. All right, now we're moving towards the west side of town. The west side is very popular for a suburb and for choice. And I say that because if you pull back almost as much as you have across the south end of town, so we had a lot of activity down here for people that were looking in a relocation range. You see the same thing out here to the west. The good news about the west, and I think one of the biggest popularity standpoints for this area, is it is some of the most naturally beautiful areas to live, and it already has a good highway structure in the beginning, okay? So a lot of folks already come to me talking about North Apopka, Mount Dora, and Claremont. Now remember, we're talking about North Claremont, not South Claremont. South Claremont is a good stretch 10-minute drive down almost to Disney World, okay? I talked to you about that earlier in the segment, so if you are interested in South Claremont, you skipped ahead to this chapter, go back and watch what I say about this, because this is very different than what we're going to talk about up here. But let's talk about the two. Now, the north end of Apopka, okay? This is a fast growing area. So all of this area right up here, there's a exit off of the 429. And 429, by the way, is a beautiful thing to live near, okay? And everything in this area is minutes to get on this highway to get all the way up back to Orlando from here, or to shoot straight down to Disney World from here. And it's almost always a comfortable drive. Now, the other thing is there's other highways built into town. So let's say you don't want to go the 429 and go north, you can cut down from Apopka and take the 414 down to the middle of town very efficiently. In fact, the 414 is right here on the map. You can see that. Now, the more east to west and the more north to south areas that you can get to quickly from your home, the easier it will be to commute almost anywhere, okay? Which makes this an amazing place. Now, before they really started to build out, and right now, if we take you into 429, which I oftentimes do, and jump off at Kelly Park Road, you will see a litany of new builders building in this area, okay? Now, they're building around some new planned walkable shopping districts that are coming, some keystone locations, both here, and then they're also announcing more up towards Mount Dora. Wild Oak is what's being built here at Apopka, and then Wolf Branch is being built up here towards Mount Dora. Both of them are early stage, so you're years out for that, but you have that on top of a lot of new construction. I would imagine that the locals are loving it because a lot of the area was built on 1 acre, half acre minimum to about 5 acre estates. There's a lot of that. You can also buy acreage here, beautiful homes. So the cool thing about this, and I like North Apopka. I am a bull on North Apopka because you have some beautiful woods and natural beauty. Like the bigger trees are here. The Wekiva Forest is just down the street from your home, but the area is dense with forest, okay? Now, some people are massively afraid of it. So there are homes here that don't have trees near the house, which is fine. But I'm telling you, the general aesthetic of the north, and I'm talking the north end of Apopka, is very nice, okay? And then you have a mix. You have some beautiful homes with character, much like I would say about Longwood, some of these other areas where you have the beautiful natural aesthetic, but you also have a little bit of a good option of home with decent sized lots. Now, I am going to say in the west, there's more sloping, okay? So if you're looking at North Apopka, I'm going to say the same thing about Claremont and Mineola, that it's more hilly in the west. It's hilarious that the rest of the state is largely flat. The rest of Orlando is largely flat. And it adds to the beauty because you're driving over hills and it's beautiful green hills. Usually there's a valley with some water in the bottom of it, like a lake or pond. And it's just an amazing aesthetic to be around. Okay, so if that's what you're for. Now, I will say the planning for the area for commercial is in the middle. It's in the middle. And I feel like too, everything isn't here yet. Okay. You don't have the dense shopping opportunities that you will in the future. Okay. There's a lot coming up. There's even new stuff built recently, like new mid-size shopping centers, which will offer like a Publix and hair offer, nail offers, a couple food places. These kinds of small mid-sized things are there, but you are driving if you want the mega shopping center kind of thing. It's just not easily to reach here. However, you have Mount Dora nearby. Mount Dora has a lot of offerings on its own. Mount Dora is much like St. Cloud, but maybe a little bit more on steroids. You have multiple blocks of old, quaint, fun city. Beautiful at Christmas time. They light the place up. It is small town Florida that's been maintained, okay? And I would say it's a rarity. Mount Dora has it. Sanford has it. St. Cloud has it. Kissimmee has it on the main street. Winter Garden is very famous for Plant Street. Claremont has it. They're developing it out. So there's just a few areas where like a lot of folks will say, I want a downtown to walk to. I want a downtown that's walkable. I want to drive in and see the farmer's market and see the people. And that's what I want to live among, okay? So that is going to have it. Now, I would say that Mount Dora is getting on the edge of where most people are comfortable when they live in Orlando market, okay? So like when you think about the edges, like how far will I drive to still call myself an occupant of Orlando? South Volusia, Deltona, DeBary is the edge, right? Mount Dora kind of gets to be the edge. Eustis is next town out. It feels far for a lot of people, okay? Unless you just want to live out in the middle of the country. You don't care about any of the downtown. You don't ever want to visit. You don't need to go to the airport. You don't need to go to see a game or visit the park. If you don't care about that, then that becomes an option. Most people, this is kind of like the cutting line, okay? Mount Dora becomes that over here. Groveland tends to become to the west. Haines City is rarely requested because the edge of Davenport is far enough. And honestly, Poinciana is almost too far for most people. I don't see a lot of people saying, okay, I'm good with this. Harmony is the edge on the east. But it's kind of like this boundary mark, you know, where people just feel like, man, I'm too far from Orlando. This Florida's enormous. Like you could literally just throw a dart and live in the middle of nowhere. Like there's Kalamazoo out. I don't even know what's in Kalamazoo. Like I've never been there. It's far. Osteen, I know what Osteen is. Osteen's far, you know? So depends on what you're after. You may not care anyways to live in some of these locations, but there's a lot of opportunity and growth in these areas, okay? But I will say, compared with like a Claremont, so let's say hierarchy of the West, okay? Where does my dollar go the farthest? North of Apopka is going to be very comparable to Claremont. Where am I going to have the best access to things? Shopping, the districts, the food, anything that I randomly want on a regular basis. Claremont is going to have that much easier than will the area up north. Now, will that change? Eventually. Now, I would give the north a minor leg up on an easier drive-in than I will Claremont. Claremont has, okay, some good freeway accessibility, but I would say it's just a tiny bit behind how easy it is for Apopka. But there's upsides to both areas. Now, let me say one more word, okay? If you are in a higher budget, okay? So I'm really looking at the move up budget when we're looking at these areas. You're going to go on message boards and people always say, hey, I heard some things about Apopka, this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, there's an old section of Apopka. There really is. And there's a concept in real estate that we talk about where you don't want to have the biggest house with a bunch of smaller, older houses, right? So there's just a general idea. I think it's called progression, regression, if not mistaken. Learned it in real estate school like 23 years ago. I'm like, man, we really should bring this up more often because one of the things that helps people match their homes is the density of like homes around them. So one of the things, it's just plain old economics. If you have a house and the homes around your house are really inferior to the one you bought, that is not good. That is effectively somewhat dangerous from a future resale standpoint. People always say, what's a good for resale value? Is this a good area for resale value? Plainly put, if there's a high percentage home in your area that is deficient in value to yours, it's draining, it's pulling away from your value and helping theirs. So your bigger, nicer house makes their house more valuable. And in reality, it weighs it down. Okay. So it's just a reality of economics. So one of the things I will say is unless you are on the bottom end of the price point range, you want to be mindful of that in the South here, particularly in this pocket. You start to see some matches of new construction, newer homes, things of that nature. You want to make sure that you're okay with the mix because there is some smaller price ranges down here. Okay. Not all of it. Further towards the lake, it's different, but like you just want to, make sure it's good. Make sure it matches you. Okay. And again, there's nothing off about any of these areas. I mean, we have to be careful what we say on real estate videos anyways. I'm not trying to blight the area. I'm not trying to harm anybody, but I'm trying to help you make a decision based on what you're after because this area is the perfect area for someone. Okay. It just is. Okay. But I'm trying to say, depending on where your price point is, it's also an area that you want to be mindful of, knowing what else is being resold in that area for budget-wise. All right, so let's take a look at Claremont and the rest, okay? By the way, Ocoee is another one. You can start to see a lot of mixes right here against the lake. Very commuter friendly, okay? Very, very commuter friendly. So this is an area that you're going to be right off the 429. You've got the 408 right here. You can get to it very fast. You got the turnpike here. So Ocoee's largest draw in Ocoee is commuter friendliness. Beautiful homes, by the way, built up against the lake, a lot of new construction, very peaceful area. I would say in the continuum of this area, this is one of the nicer ones. And also off of Ocoee, Claremont, there's some beautiful areas built around little pocket lakes that Lennar constructed. Arden Park, and amazing, really nice, well-planned, desirable, little golf course, things of that nature. And then you're going into some older stretch of town though. Okay. So that's just something to be mindful for. If you're trying to live near homes that are all like mine kind of thing, there is a little bit of a blend because you're going into an older area as you go towards the downtown. Okay. Now going towards Claremont, Claremont is the city among the lakes. It's a beautiful area. If you are a boat enthusiast or a bike enthusiast, you have bike trails that literally go from downtown all the way back up to Claremont. You go 30 miles on a bike, whatever that is, cuts straight through Plant Street. So that's an opportunity, but you also have amazing lakes. So one of the things that locals don't know, if you are looking for lake sports, some of the best lakes and for fishing is going to be this lake right here. Johns Lake is 2,300 acres. This is on the Claremont line, and the east side of that is Winter Garden. This is amazing lake, public dock on the north up here off of Highway 50. You can park a boat right on it. Or you could park a boat, buy a house with no HOA, get a boat, and go into the Claremont chain. These lakes are chained, by the way. You can go for miles on the water in the Claremont chain of lakes. And it is amazing. Again, the water is good too. So the thing is, if you're in water sports, you want to make sure that you can swim in the water. Lake Apopka is polluted water, okay? Years of orchard growth and all that around the area, it has affected the quality of that water. You do not want to swim in Lake Apopka, okay? However, you can boat just fine the Claremont chain and Johns Lake, okay? A lot of major lake systems and live in these particular areas. Choice galore. The area is beautiful. It's hilly. You pull over high green hills. People from the East Coast north, like they'll come from PA or some of these areas in the northern states and be like, I feel like I'm back at home. And they love it. And there's a lot of opportunity. Now, Claremont has some new construction in the area. However, a lot of it is resale now, but the resale is quality. Okay. I like a lot of the development that went on in Claremont. They built really cool neighborhoods that were middle class, middle of the road. There's a variety of construction that took place in Claremont. So you have some really cool neighborhoods. A lot of the ownership in Claremont, in my opinion, has great high pride of ownership, and you're super accessible, not just to natural beauty, amazing parks, but you have good freeway access. You get to Disney pretty efficiently. You have a lot of variety in the real estate market, from manned gated communities that are not crazy expensive. The HOAs are not outlandish. You have amazing non-gated, non-HOA that do not look run down with high pride of ownership, good size lots, less density in the area generally. And then the entire area is built around commercial off of the main streets. So you have commercial all over these little pocketed areas, and you just kind of go over the hill from your little lake house and bam, everything you need is right down their street. So highly convenient. Again, does it feel too congested? I mean, locals in Claremont will say, yeah, this is congested because they've lived there for 20 years, and I understand where you're coming from. However, per capita, this is not an overly built out location. Okay. Per capita, for the amount of people who live on the amount of space you have in Claremont, it is way less dense. And also you have a lot of future opportunity, because this area down here, you see this whole area, Horizon West, is going to meet Highway 27. A lot of construction is planned for this general area right here, and that is going to add more infrastructure. You have a Highway 516 going in already right here to tie it into Winter Garden. So you just shoot down here, boom, go to the 429, bam, you're in Disney in probably way less time than it takes now. And it's not crazy far for Disney, okay? But my point is, this area has a whole lot of planning happening, from the triathlon training centers that are going in here because we have these lakes and we have bikeable areas. People come all over the world to train for ski and water sports from all over the world for these lakes. Okay. So there's a lot of activity and there's a lot of future growth planned. This area is going to connect before long. There's going to be thousands of acres developed in the next 5 years, which will, in my mind, enhance the offer of this area itself. Okay, so the downtown area is here for Claremont. Okay, beautiful lakefront parks on both the west side, beautiful park here, Lake Hiawatha, amazing park, the south end, all that, so much going on. Very big fan of this community. I think a lot of people, it's oftentimes love at first sight for a lot of these neighborhoods. And when you have an amazing community aesthetic, okay, the beauty of the outdoors. So if we're just talking about, wow, this cool area, this amazing exterior aesthetic, things to do, it's going to be Claremont, it's going to be Apopka North, it's going to be Longwood across the top of town. It might be even St. Cloud. And again, not knocking anything else. I'm saying a lot of the other communities, Avalon Park even, I think comes up a lot. If you're not looking for an older house, if you want something that's like, when I say older house, I mean, we have a lot of construction through the heart of town that's 40s, 1930s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. A lot of this was developed in that category. So now when you're going towards newer, but I don't feel so far, this becomes popular and, really cool, walkable, kind of mixed blend neighborhood with that kind of stuff going on. And then the suburbia going on down here, the natural beauty of, some of these areas is just amazing. You got to think about Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive up here in Apopka. You could drive around and see like 50 gators sunning themselves. I'm amazed that people actually, it's a 10-mile drive through the wilderness area here. And on certain days, you'll see gators just laying around everywhere. I remember one time going through this area and you see people hiking it. And I mean, it's most of the time, that's rare. More rare is that people are hiking. Most people are biking, which even biking, like I'm like, holy cow. I've seen people like tourist kind of people getting out of their car to like look into a ditch, and behind there's like weeds sitting next to them and they can't see, but behind the weeds is a huge gator, like sitting literally like 10 feet from them. Some of the largest gators I've ever seen you can go through. And the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive is just a fun thing. It's free. You just drive out there, you make sure it's open. It's managed by, I think, one of the municipalities, and you drive out. And I think if you get there when it's kind of sun coming out after rain, there's a lot of times there's gators everywhere. Like you'll just see tons. That's the thing. It's hit and miss, sometimes you'll see a lot and sometimes you won't. But Florida offers a lot. There's just a variety of, the downtown area. I didn't even get into, the mid-rise towers and high-rise towers we have downtown. And, there's just a lot of opportunity to live where you want to live. Sometimes there's just this game of playing the Price is Right. And I'm happy to play it with you to make sure that you buy the right home the first time. And ultimately, I hope this overview helped. I think this is probably one of the most important clarifying videos because I think it helps people who really operate in one of the most common budgets. So people from $400,000 to $600,000 that need a larger home with multiple bedrooms, things of that nature. This is a lot of where you're starting your search. So if you're something else, if you are just a couple, two people, two partners buying together, you need an office or workspace and a bedroom, and then there's not much else. Like you have a lot more opportunity in that budget, especially if you're shopping above it. There's a whole bunch more that can be looked at. And I would say that's for another video. But with all that being said, drop down below. Let me know what your questions are about different areas.
When you're buying or selling a home, the process itself can feel overwhelming. When this happens, you need a real estate expert that can turn this around for you. So all you need to do, make one call, that's all, and put nearly 4,000 homes sold and my 23 years of experience to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
If you're in the Central Florida area and you're looking for a great church, I'd love for you to join me at the Grove Bible Chapel. Just visit joinmeatthegrove.com for full details.